Hi. There we go. Hi, welcome everybody. Rick DiClemente with Astrology Unplugged. Good to have you with us tonight, and we're going to be talking tonight about planetary combinations. And what I mean by that is it's hard to read a chart or understand a transit. Remember, natal pairings of charts are different than transiting versus the natal. Two planets in the natal chart, two planets being hit by transit are different things. I do not have the time to answer all the questions because I got to keep my eye on what we're doing. I will show you how this started in general. In the old days was with this book called, let's see if I can find it here. Let me see. I should have it here. Oh, I got rid of it. I lost it. Anyhow, the first book that we used that really did a study on this was called A Combination of Stellar Influences. It was written in German by Rudolf Reinhardt. Rudolf Eberton. Is that right? Reinhard Eberton. Reinhard Eberton, an old German book. He was a master. He combined all the planets. He even brought in a third planet. What happens if you have two planets here and a third one there? Well, he unfortunately was written in German, and the translation to English was not very good. But it was the standard that most people followed for Reinhard Eberton. Yeah, A Combination of Stellar Influences. That stood ground for many years, and it was good for telling you the positive and minus of Venus with Mars, Venus with Saturn. What's the positive minus, light and dark of it natally versus transit. But it really left a lot to be desired. You could tell it was an early attempt. And then along, I guess, in the 80s came the wonderful book by Stephen Arroyo called The Handbook for Chart Analysis. He redid it. He's really good because he's really realistic, and he sucks out of these planets the archetypal meaning, what they really mean. And again, you can't tell what Mercury next to Pluto means unless you know what Mercury is. It all comes back to building blocks. A planet is in a sign, it's in a house, and it has aspects. A planet is in a sign, it's in a house, it has aspects to other points and other planets. And if you're not doing other people's charts, you're going to be the Chart Interpretation Handbook. Yes, Rip, that's that name. So I'm going to start into it. By the way, on my website, under the book list, there is a suggested book list that's a little out of date that Liza and I put together. And it's divided into astrology books, into philosophical books, into spiritual books, but the astrology section is pretty darn good. It's really rare that you find a new, exciting, really good astrology book. There are a lot of really junky ones out there, and there are a lot of great ones too. But it takes some discernment to see the good ones. A lot of people can talk astrology, but they can't read. A lot of people can read, but they can't write. It's a rare person like Arroyo who can do the master counseling that he did and be able to express it to others and write about it. So you can look in your chat section on the screen, and you can see the actual names of these books, which are at Amazon. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Sun, Moon, Sun, Mercury, Sun, Venus, Sun, Mars, go all the way out. I'm going to leave Chiron out of it for now. Then we'll go Moon down the list, and we'll go right down straight through. You have to have a basic understanding. A lot of people, they see Sun, Saturn, and they panic. One of the best things you can have. But that's from experience. You got to take with a grain of salt what you're reading because you don't have the experience, but be very careful not to buy what somebody's saying until you see it in the clients, including me. When I speak strongly, that means I've seen a lot of evidence. When I speak like this, It means I've seen wavering evidence. So here we are on week 75. Sun, moon. I'm talking about a natal chart. It means you're either born during a new moon, you're born during a full moon, or the sun and moon are at a right angle. They're very hard to talk about. Sun-moon trines are wonderful. I've seen people get pounded and pounded on in life, and they got a sun-moon trine, and you can't knock them off their pedestal. You just can't knock them off the mountain because they have such great stability between their conscious mind, the sun, and the unconscious mind, the moon. I've seen people with sun-moon, sun-opposite moon, who have no matter what they do, they can't keep it together. So the sun, it's very important. What you're talking sun moon is you're really talking about the phase of the moon. And you're talking about a lot of books out there talk about the phases of the moon. You can read them and they have a lot of good meaning in them, and it's not my expertise. But when the moon is troubled, you got emotional imbalance. When the sun is troubled, you got trouble with the self or with the id or with the ego. I'm not going to talk much about them because you can go on forever talking about the phases of the moon. Sun, Mercury. Now, Sun, Mercury is very common because Mercury can only be in the same sign as the sun sign or next door. Since we are further out from the sun, and you're looking in at Mercury, well, if the sun is in Libra, then Mercury can only be 3 places for all Libras ever. Virgo, Libra, Scorpio. And I'm not going to show the zodiac, but you got to start building this picture in your mind. You got to start building this picture in your mind. Now, I'm a hard taskmaster Capricorn, I tell you. Now, a lot of people have the sun conjunct Mercury within 9 degrees on either side. There's all these different stories about sun being combust or Cassini. And they talk about how the Mercury's not functioning, etc., etc. What I have noticed when the Sun Mercury is really close, I've seen a lot of autism. I've seen a lot of autism because the sun is just too bright for the nervous system, which is Mercury. Mercury is the mind, the brain, and the nervous system. And sometimes, in general, I don't like any planet too close to anything. I want some breathing room between stuff. But that's not how we work. So the Sun Mercury can really provide burnout from inside because there's too much life energy coming from the sun pouring through that nervous system. One of my first clients ever, she was my first client. She had an autistic son. I predicted the pregnancy on her 2 sons. And then years later, we found out that her Sun Mercury was right. He was showing autistic tendencies. So what I did is I wrote down for her over the next 7 years, these are the dates when that point will be aspected by Mars or by a bigger planet. So I wrote down those points, and so when those periods would come, he would get irritated and he would act up. She knew it was going to pass by, and it did pass by, and I believe that helped her very, very much. But your planets are where they're supposed to be. You're not born because somebody picked their schedule around their vacation for a C-section. Forget it. The soul is born at the second that it needs to be born. And that's in direct correlation to your karma and your past life history. So Sun Mercury can be very, very good, especially if it's like Sun in Aquarius, Mercury in Aquarius. You got somebody who's a genius. So when the 2 planets are together, one is influencing the other, and the other one is influencing it. So don't get lost in that. The general rule is the farther out the planet, the more powerful it is. It's like the big mamas are Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. So Sun Mercury is a bright mind, a creative mind, sometimes too creative. Generally, I think it's way overblown. I don't see a lot of problems with Mercury, even those who are born with Mercury retrograde. Sun, Venus. Sun, Venus is likewise, it can only be in 5 places. If you're a Scorpio, then the Venus can be in Scorpio, it can be in Libra, it can be in Virgo, or it can be in Sag or Capricorn. It can only be in the same sign or one or two signs away. Sun Venus people almost always are lovers of life. They love life. It's one of the main beautiful things about Venus, is loving life, enjoying life. Which is why we see the rulership of Libras, as they certainly know how to enjoy life, and the co-rulership, I believe, of the sign Taurus. They certainly can enjoy life. The negative side of Venus, without a doubt, is sloth, laziness. You'll see this with people. One of the big problems with Venus is laziness. You want the easy road. You want it handed to you. But the inner planets, when you get into grave problems with the personality, they usually don't come from the inner planets. They usually come from interruptions from the outer planets. That's where the heavy energy is. Sun Venus is usually very pretty pleasant. Okay, Sun Mars. Well, the Sun and Mars, figure one's Mars and one's on fire. So there's a pretty good combination. We're talking to Deborah earlier. She's got Sun Mars together. Well, what I like about her Sun Mars is the problem with Taurus is getting them to move. They don't want to move. They want to be static. Well, with the Sun Mars, that really helps Deborah move. So in her case, the Sun Mars could be good. I don't care what sign of Mars is in. Mars could be anywhere. So this specific rule is only with Mercury and Venus. Mercury can be 3 places. Venus can be 5. All the other guys can be anywhere. Okay? Mars will tend to irritate whatever it's with. The Sun being next to Mars, Mars makes you impatient. You want to get it done now. It can make you overblown with your testosterone, a little bit of too much of bullying energy sometimes. But generally, Sun Mars really activates you, and you're able to express your personality. Susan Avare, I'm not going to get the Mars Jupiter till we get the Mars. We're starting with the Sun. Okay, Sun, Venus, Mars, Sun, Jupiter. Sun, Jupiter is usually really pretty good. The only problem with Sun, Jupiter is people get hyperbole. They express themselves too much. They get over exaggerative, you know. Sun, Jupiter is usually pretty darn good because you got the light of the sun coming through this wonderfully buoyant, happy planet of Jupiter. The only problem with Jupiter is sometimes the person is glib, or they don't realize all the complications that are involved because they're pre-Saturnian. They don't realize how much work is really involved. I've got a really nice article in my files out there called Jupiter is Overrated and Saturn is Underrated. It was written years ago. You may want to look that up through my indices that are out there on my newsletters. Sun, Saturn, very, very misunderstood. Crippled, stopped, no life experience. You can't get anywhere. You're blocked all the time. Life is hardship. I mean, it's a bunch of junk. I have seen so many people be extremely, extremely successful with Sun, Saturn. Sun square Saturn, Sun opposite Saturn. Now, since Saturn represents lots of times the father, if the aspect is really close, like Sun opposite a retrograde Saturn, if it's really close, I'm guaranteed the person had no fusion with the father figure. Be careful how you select your words. I didn't say the father was cruel. I said they didn't join. Sun opposite a retrograde Saturn, it's very common. The father's on the road, has to work all the time, was cold. I've seen other people with Sun, Saturn, they got along great with the father. And the mother took on the Saturnian role because she was the discipliner. So the moon can be the father, the Saturn can be the mother. It all depends. The moon represents who your nurturer was. Your moon could represent your grandma. It could represent your sister. It could represent your dad. Who was your nurturer? Who was your lack of nurturer? In general, one of the reasons people are so successful with Saturn is so Saturn won't leave you alone. Saturn is what? Making sure. Getting things done, making sure, just making sure, making sure. That's why they're successful. They get so frustrated and have to work, work, work. And you'll find in astrology that people become an expert in direct relationship to what their trauma was. The real effective women and men, the real effective women working in rape centers are the ones who've been raped. The real effective psychologists are the ones who had to dig out from under mental abuse. So you can dig and find the abuse in the chart. You can get a good clue on what their power is. But Sun Saturn can be crippling. It can lead to a lot of self-doubt. It can lead and indicate somebody who wasn't allowed to be himself. The Sun is being myself. The Sun and Uranus are similar. The Sun is, I'm expressing myself. You know what? I'm going to write this down because I thought of this last night. I'm going to do 1 week. I thought about a new show. We're going to go all the way around a circle and make a fool out of everybody. We're going to do astro drama. And I'm going to say, I'm in a room with 2 of my friends, and you're Neptune, and you just walked in, you're on. Start talking. What do you want to say? That's how you learn. That's how you learn. You bring these planets to life. And you'll be surprised when I've taught students. And when you bring these planets into your embodiment, you understand how Uranus feels. You understand how Neptune feels. You understand how Pluto feels. And your body knows these archetypes. So Sun Saturn can be very limiting. It can be karmic. It can be also very good because people who get things done have a strong Saturn because they can define the problem and get it done. If your Saturn is weak, you're not going to go anywhere. You're just not. You don't have the wherewithal to get it done. Saturn is one of the most critical parts of a chart. Sun, Uranus. Okay, now we're getting out there. Sun, Uranus people on the plus sign, like the conjunction wide or the trine or sextile, Sun, Uranus people are brilliant. They're fast. Things hit their mind quickly. They're inventive. I'm born with Sun opposite Uranus. So I get the quickness of it. I also get overwhelmed by it. I also can't stop talking about it because the Uranian energy is so powerful. Flashes of insight. Uranus, when it's good and when it's well aspected, is very positive. It makes you very friendly. It makes you very humanitarian, idealistic. All the qualities of the rulership. It's another thing you have to learn by memory is what planet rules what sign. You have to know this. There'll be a quiz tomorrow night. You have to know this. Uranus is the Aquarian planet. And the downside is it's hyper, it's off the wall, it comes out of nowhere. You're having a discussion, somebody starts talking about something out here. Where'd that come from? Just come out of nowhere? Because Uranian people are very fast. They're processing things very quickly. Sun Neptune people. Now you're getting into dangers. No, Elke, you just let Marilyn be. She's fine. She's taking it all in. Okay. Sun Neptune people. Now, Neptune is very tough with the Sun. Why is that? Because the Sun has a lot to do with your daily, down-to-earth ego. And Neptune has no idea how to deal with the ego. To Neptune, the Sun is not real. To the Sun, Neptune's not real. Well, you know who the boss of the zodiac is, don't you? And it ain't Pluto. It's Neptune. The boss of the zodiac, in my opinion, is Neptune because it's the godlike planet. Well, the sun has to subjugate itself. So we saw that in Mark's chart. Mark's not with us tonight. But here you got Mark, this very dynamic, very aggressive, very strong-minded Aries, but he's very, very quiet. He's got the sun opposite Neptune. And Neptune, just for lack of a better word, if you get in a battle between the ego wanting to express itself and Neptune wanting to be in the background, wanting to be quiet, let things come to it. The beauty of Neptune is when you see the Neptune trine to Venus, and you look at Audrey Hepburn, and you try to explain her beauty, or Grace Kelly. You're trying to. It's otherworldly beauty. That comes from Neptune. You want to see some spaced out people? Sun, Neptune. The reason why, and I've seen it a lot, and this is when you don't want the orb too close. Now, I know a lot of people with Sun, Neptune. And the reason why, Neptune will not accept boundaries. It does not deal with boundaries. Its world is boundless. And if you tell this person with the sun, well, you're really good here, you came from this, and you do this like that, you look like you're one of those, they'll never accept it. They won't accept it. So that's one of the problems with Neptune, is you can hand deliver a perfect description to them, and they won't accept it, because they're always saying, I'm more than that, I'm more than that, I'm more than that. So you got the trickery of having to blend the sun, which is a healthy ego. In fact, it's what Pisces people need more of, and Neptune, which could care less, and is not going to support your ego. So there can be a delicate balance there. That's why we need all 12, all 11 planets, whatever you want to count as planets, working in harmony. Sun, Pluto. Okay, when Pluto's opposite something, when it's near something, when it's aspecting something, it makes the planet more scorpionic. So Pluto is known for working in the dark depths underneath the muddy water. The sun is buoyant. The beach ball, you push it underwater, it comes back up. So you got the contrast between the buoyancy up in the air in the sky and the Pluto in the depths. So that's how you can end up with a Scorpio who everything's out front. And you end up with other Scorpios, everything's secretive. Notice that when you're with Scorpios, you'll see how some of them are very deep and their cards are very close. And they're up to something. And the other ones that aren't. And they're really out front. A lot of that has to do with Sun Pluto. Pluto is so threatening, it's so powerful because it just won't require, it won't let you get away with less. You just got to come through with some courage. When the sun is involved with Pluto, usually the outer planet is mastering the inner planet by now. Pluto will make the sun feel inferior. Well, you could have two wonderful planets. That's why I start all my readings with, what sign was your parent between the ages of 5 and 15? How did you feel when you were with mom? I don't care what you thought. How did you feel? I don't care what her reputation was. How did you feel when you were with your mother? And as the sun sign, I don't want anything else. Because people want to go on and on and on about the parents. And I'm not here to read for the parents. I'm here to read for you. And I need to just find out what your experience is like. Then I ask, what's the mother's sign? Between the ages of 5 and 15, how did you feel when you were with her? Well, she was this way and this way. I don't care what your description is. How did you feel? And a lot of people can't answer you because they are not allowed to feel what they felt. Because so long ago, they learned that if they felt what they felt, they were going to get slapped or yelled at. So you can tell right away when you ask that question, somebody gives you, they start thinking. You can tell right away because the ones that had healthy relationships with the parents say, oh, it was good, great, she was always there. It was good, she was wonderful. Dad was always there, like my best friend. So when Pluto's opposite the sun, you can have a literal weak sense of self that comes from past lives. It could come from this life. Orb is everything. You could have two parents that are so wonderful that it's threatening because you've got them on such a pedestal that you can't win. But some Pluto people are facing, they usually have a hard time with relationships because they can't handle the intensity of the emotions involved. The positive side is you become stronger, you become more scorpionic, more passionate, more able to keep from betraying, more dedicated. The opposite side is you betray, or you get hung up thinking everybody's betraying you all the time. We'll get to Pluto with the other planets later. Okay, let's move to the moon now. All right, now the moon next to Mercury. The moon next to Mercury is usually a really minor deal because they're both fast moving, they're not very quick, and usually when the moon is messed up with Mercury, you have a little bit of a problem. It's not a big deal, but it's usually a little bit of a problem with feelings, thought, logic. Should I go with my gut? Should I go with my feelings? Should I go with my gut? That's why you see these people with moon trine to Mercury, and they have this magical ability. They know when to go with their gut. They know when to go with their logic. They just got it. Same with Venus and Mars. It's not that big of a deal. They're minor planets. Moon, Venus. Now you're talking. These are the two loveliest planets of all. These are the two planets that really give you emotion and water in the chart, beside Neptune, which is really hard to lasso. Venus and the moon are lovely planets when they're really strong. We've got a friend, Liza and I got a friend who's got Venus and the moon right across the ascendant. And he's got all kinds of abilities, all kinds of money, all kinds of projects going on. But when you have the moon Venus so strongly aspected, the person has a hard time dealing with logic. They think it through, they do the numbers, they write down the problem, they got the answer, and then they act emotionally. When your moon Venus is really strongly emphasized, you just can't override your emotion no matter what the reasoning says. The positive side is just really beautiful because you got the caringness of the moon, which is much more caring than Venus. Venus is very tactful and behaved, and you've got the classiness and the tact of Venus being added to the moon, and it can be really, really a good combination. Moon trine Venus can be really excellent. Moon square Venus, moon opposite Venus, like I said, you're acting from emotion instead of the intellect. The moon and Mars. All right, now right away you can see trouble here. The moon next to Mars. Because the moon is feeling some and Mars wants to punch. You ever have a little kid, you're watching them babysitting, and they just want to roughhouse all the time. You can't get them calmed down and talk about something. They just want to, that's what they're doing. They got too much Mars in the chart. And they can't sit down and absorb. So moon Mars is real good if you're going to train a boxer. And it's real bad if you want to get somebody to calm down and find peace within. Because the moon is really, really, really important in your chart. Your moon needs to relax. Your moon is your couch. Relax and take it easy. And if Mars is there, depending on what sign it's in, depending on what aspect it is, you are punchy. Mars wants to go do it to it. Doesn't want to think about it. Just go do it. Moon next to Jupiter. I've seen a lot of really, really good aspects with it. The problem with Jupiter is everybody in astrology is taught that anything Jupiter touches is wonderful forever, and they're wrong. The biggest disasters in my life have always come from Jupiter, in my life, without a doubt. And it's because Jupiter doesn't take something seriously. Don't worry about it. It'll work out. It's flippant. You know, and the rest of me is Capricorn, wants to get things done. Jupiter doesn't want the responsibility. It doesn't want to worry about the details. Generally, Moon Jupiter is very good to make you buoyant. It's really good, like if the moon is in Taurus or the moon is in Virgo, it gives it some fire and some lift to it. Most of the time, it's usually pretty good. Moon opposite Jupiter, you can get a little bit excessive, but you have to keep an eye on Jupiter. Just as Jupiter is not always good and jolly, Saturn is not always bad and restrictive. That's why that article is important. Moon next to Saturn. Now here we're getting into some tough ones now. Moon Saturn can be really, really tough. Okay. Moon next to Saturn. I have several friends that have Moon next to Saturn in conjunction widely, and it makes their moon become more like a moon in Capricorn. In this case, the moon's not affecting Saturn. Saturn is affecting the moon. And Saturn's seriousness, getting things done, being dutiful, get the job done, suck it up, is on that moon. Now, I know people who are very lighthearted Geminis, and they got Moon to Saturn, and they're very dependable. When Gemini sun sign is not real dependable. And you could pick up a lot of good traits from Saturn. When it's too close, though, when it's opposite, when it's square, it can become a really major problem in the chart. It can, but don't freak out if you see it. You got to look at the whole chart. You got to ask questions. And what happens when the moon is opposite Saturn or square is the person learns that whatever I feel is wrong. I don't know, but whatever I feel, I get crap for it. And where does it come from? In my experience, without a doubt, it comes from past lives and all this dogma shoved down your throat where you learn that you're just not unworthy. You're unworthy. You're unworthy. You're unworthy. Raise a wretch like me. Raise the wretch like me. Now, you told you I used to walk out of 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old. I used to walk out of communion and I wanted to get hit by a truck. There's your Catholic religion for me. It's my opinion. I wanted to get hit by a truck. If I could die right now, I'm guaranteed to go to heaven. I'll go down the street. I'll have one sin and I'm going to hell. That's how I thought. That's how I was programmed. Moon Saturn can be really tough, and most of the reasons are, and I can work a long time with people with Moon Saturn because they can't stop mentalizing their emotional difficulties. They keep trying to fix it. They keep trying to theorize it. And the whole problem is when the moon is set free and the moon feels, something interrupts it. The moon feels and something says, you shouldn't have done that. Why'd you do that? It's real critical, Saturn. So it can be very tough. It can be, and you have to ask questions. You can't say the mother and father were at odds. I've seen moon opposite Saturn, mother and father. I've seen the parents be fine. Don't be so cocky. Find out. Ask them. They'll tell you. They're eager to talk. They'll tell you. It was pretty good. It was terrible. It was wonderful. Moon Saturn can be very tough because you don't allow yourself to breathe, and you can become very codependent, and you can become very bossy, trying to own the other person emotionally. It can be very, very tough, especially if the orb is close or if it's near the angles. And what Moon Saturn people need to do is learn to trust. And boy, a Moon Saturn person usually can't do it. They usually can't do it, or they have to spend a lot of time working at it. Moon Uranus. What do you see right away with the picture? Moon Uranus. Did your family move a lot? Did you have a lot of chaos? Was your mom changing her mind all the time? Were you living in the White House? Were you living in the White House? Were you living in the White House? That's a Moon Uranus place, that place. That's Moon Uranus. You don't know what the hell's going to go on next. Dad was in the Navy. We had to move all the time. Your moon can't relax. It's upset all the time. Now, moon trine Uranus, moon conjunct Uranus with a little bit of distance, means you're kind of lively. It brings that moon, makes it livelier. It makes it not so stick in the mud. It makes it friendlier, more adventurous. It can be good. You got to be very careful with the outer planets. When the outer planets aspect the inner, got to be very careful. The moon Uranus people I know that have like moon opposite Uranus or moon Uranus up and down in midheaven, you don't know what they're going to say. They're just unpredictable. You could say the littlest thing, a flea could come by and they're just upset like this. Or something else could come by and they're just so grateful. Just these flares. That's the problem with Uranus. It's an unpredictable emotional state. Usually the mother speaketh with forketh tongue. Usually. Not always. And I guess what I'm saying, after 40 years, I'm learning more and more and more. It's not the parents in your chart. It's not the brother. It's not the socioeconomic situation. It's the past life. That's what I'm learning. It's the past life. It's the series of past lives. It's what I call the spiritual transcript. That's what forms the birth chart. Moon Neptune. Oh boy. Moon Neptune, I believe Angel has this one. This is a wonderful combination for psychic ability because the two planets that are psychic are the moon and Neptune. They're really, really, you figure the moon is your feelings and Neptune says no boundaries. That's what causes the psychic ability. You're reaching, your tendrils are reaching out everywhere. You're absorbing everything. And likewise, the problem with Moon Neptune, and I've seen so much problems with it, is the person doesn't know where they end. Talk all you want to about the New Age goofy stuff. You're still in a human body. If you got too much Aquarius, you got too much Pisces, go out on the fifth dimension, go out and do what you want. Blah, 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 blah. You're still in a human body. And you're not going to live on Moon Neptune on cloud 9 with Jimi Hendrix's memory up there. You're just not going to do it. You got to come down to earth. You're going to live in an ashram. Okay. All right. Someone's going to take care of you while you sit in meditation in the cave for 6 years. Okay. But Moon Neptune, you got to be very careful with Neptune aspects because they'll BS you and you could do without it. Don't worry about it. You got a bunch of food, throw it away. You got money, go burn that money. You got to be really careful, know what you're doing. And that's the trick of being a Capricorn. Be careful about being careful. Be careful you're not too careful. But Moon Neptune on its plus side is very psychic, very tender, much like a moon in Pisces. Very loving, doesn't know dimensions. They come home with their boyfriend. You go, where'd you get this guy? Oh, where'd you get this guy? There's no match at all. They see it. So it's the unboundedness, the wonderfulness of unboundedness, and the trouble that unboundedness brings. Moon Pluto. That's why my tone of voice went like that. Probably the toughest one there is. I think it's probably the toughest. That and Saturn, Neptune. Moon Pluto is really hard to figure out. I see it all the time. Moon Pluto people almost always end up in a relationship like this. Or Pluto Venus people. They can't get in a relationship that's like this. They have to dominate or be dominated. And you got to really be careful when you try to figure out what it means. How was your mom? She was great. How was your dad? He was great. This person, when the planet's opposite Pluto, you grow up thinking that you're less than Pluto. I'm inadequate emotionally. Just like Sun opposite Pluto, I'm inadequate as an ego, as a self. Moon opposite Pluto. I'm inadequate emotionally. I have a real hard time with emotions. A lot of times, those kind of people want to dominate, and then you see them years later and they're with somebody who's dominating them. What happens there is this. It takes years to learn what these planets mean, what they really want, which side to bring out when you're combining with another, because the archetypes have so many sides. Pluto wants to merge with you. I love you so much. I want the light that's inside of you, and I want to bring it with me. And the moon in Pluto is very much like having a moon in Scorpio. And that's the worst place the moon could be. Why? Because opposite the zodiac, the moon in Taurus is the best place it could be. In all of astrology, the planets have an exaltation, a place where they operate the best. The opposite signs are where they operate the worst. The problem with moon Scorpio or moon Pluto is that you want to merge so badly, but are you merging by giving 50 and 50, or are you merging by giving 10 and sucking up 90? That's the problem with moon Pluto. Are you sucking the other person dry, or are you really giving? Are you vampiristic? And it can be very unconscious. It can be very compelled to do it. You've been around people that you could just sense they want to suck you dry, especially when they see lightness. Like when you're a Scorpio prince and you're hanging around Lady Diana. Moon Pluto. Moon Pluto. Prince Charles, the Scorpio. Little dainty, little fairy, little daisy Lady Di. Everybody's identifying with her. You want to save her, right? She wasn't an angel, but that was the moon Pluto axis. There's your paper there. Okay, now we'll go to work our way out to Mercury. Mercury, all aspects to Mercury have to do with the mind. Mercury is so weak, it doesn't affect other planets, which is why I chuckle when I hear so many people lose their mind because Mercury's retrograde, which is one planet, and it is a pain. It does cause things to happen, but it's a minor planet, and the outer planet is doing it to Mercury. Mercury next to Venus, not even much use talking about that. A pleasant type of mind. Mercury next to Mars. You can see trouble brewing there. You think Mercury, Mars, you think that person's going to hold back or tell you off? Blah, blah, sharp. Who was I reading? No, I can't remember who that one was. Mercury, Mars. The good thing is they get things off their chest. They speak their mind. Aries people, Mars ruled Aries. Aries people have this wonderful gift, which is knowing who they are and they know what they want to do. They don't allow themselves to be complicated. And they look at the rest of us and they can't believe that we get ourselves in these messes and we get hesitant and we get complicated and we cause all these delays. They can't understand it. So Mercury, Mars, one of the real faults of Mercury, Mars is they blurt out stuff. You lie. Remember the guy in Congress telling the president, you lie. That was a Mercury, Mars moment because he didn't believe Obama was going to let people keep their insurance, but he did it in such a way that he made the Congress permanently a fiasco. So Mercury, Jupiter. Mercury, Jupiter is much like having a Mercury in Sagittarius. It thinks big, it's philosophical. It has the problem, too, that Mars has. It can be blunt. It can stick its foot in its mouth and get overexcited. Usually it's pretty good. it lightens up the Mercury, especially if the Mercury is in a sign where it's not very buoyant, like in Cancer or Mercury in Pisces. Being next to Jupiter can really help it out. Mercury, Saturn. Now this one's a little tricky. I've seen people with Mercury, Saturn with autism, because the Mercury definitely rules the nervous system, and Saturn definitely can cause physical restrictions in the body. It can cause you to be a slow learner. Mercury, Saturn can give you great mental toughness, like writing our book. I know Liza has very strong Mercury, Saturn, and she would come home from work tired and she'd just go right to work on our book. And anybody who works all day long, knows how tough it is to just have a little bit of supper and sit down and get into the book and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. That's tough. That takes stamina. Saturn gives stamina. So it may make you fussy. Is this the right word? Is that the right word? On the good side, it gives you stamina, it gives you the ability to speak and define things clearly. That's a lot of what I do as a double Capricorn. A lot of what I do with people is define things clearly for them. I know what planet's causing it. Let me define it for you and then see what you have to say. And then we'll modify. Mercury, Uranus. Woo! Mercury, Uranus. Uranus, this wild, wide open Thomas Edison out there trying all these experiments. Mercury's right next door. Usually it makes you a genius. Usually it makes you get genius qualities. Now, a lot of times you've seen geniuses, a lot of times geniuses can't handle it. They just can't stay on the tightrope. They fall off. They start stuttering. So the Uranus is a tremendous power, and you have to be able to channel it. And that's one reason Mercury Uranus people can be sound kind of silly, sound kind of like into conspiracies, a little bit nutty. But that comes with the territory because Uranus is so wide open. Usually it's a very good sign of somebody who can learn really fast. My son has it. He can learn stringed instruments just by thinking about how many strings it has and change the notes around, and he can go really quickly and change it in his mind because he's got genius mind musically. That comes from the Mercury trine to Uranus. If you're doing something outrageous, that's because the outer planets are feeding into the inner planets. Bartok had Mercury and Pisces opposite Uranus. Sure, and that's why Bartok had such an unusual reputation, too, for the type of music. Okay, Mercury, Neptune. Okay, now you can see where there's some good stuff and some problems. Mercury, Neptune. You got your mind involved with a limitless planet. Mercury is the thinker, and if your thinker is not used to thinking on an unlimited level, then your Mercury has problems. You can have episodes of psychosis. You can have episodes of great confusion. If it's in the right spot, it's not too bad. You can end up being tremendously psychic. Because if I'm unbounded, that means your mind is part of mine. Mercury, Neptune. At the one end, you have the psychic, intuitive abilities are great. On the other end, you get lost mentally. You just get lost. You follow some groundhog down the hole. You realize there's nothing there. You're chasing illusions. Mercury, Pluto. Again, we've seen, this is our third planet now, opposite Pluto. The person grows up thinking they're less than other people mentally. Sun opposite Pluto, Moon opposite Pluto, Mercury opposite Pluto. You feel less than intellectually. And it could be your parents telling you you're stupid. It could be one test you took when you were little and you failed and you feel bad forever. It could be from a past life, being pressured to be perfect. Most of it comes from the past life. And on the good side, Mercury, Pluto can make you really deep. You might have a shallow Mercury, like a Mercury in Gemini or a Mercury in Aries. Put it next to Pluto or opposite Pluto. All of a sudden, it's not shallow anymore. Pluto makes it go into the depths. Psychologist, being a miner, digging into things, looking behind the surface, digging deep. Now we move up to Venus. Now, Venus is a tough planet because it's not strong and it's greatly affected by the other planets that touch it. Just like Libra is. Libra is greatly affected by who they're with. Libra is greatly affected by their surroundings, the people they're with, the organization that they're with. That's why Venus has to be very careful and not overgive, overcompensate. Venus doesn't like taking stances, which is why it's not good for making decisions. This is very much the ruler of Libra. It's here to mellow things out. Let's take what we got. Let's deal with it, assuage it, make it smooth. No confrontations. Well, sometimes you got to take a confrontation. And if you're a Libra that's taking a confrontation, it's because you got other planets doing it. It's not the Venus. So Venus Venus connected to Mars. This is unbelievable how I've seen so many people miss this. Venus next to Mars. According to Arroyo, he's absolutely right. After thousands of these, is almost always narcissism. Venus and Mars work together in a symbiotic circle. Yin-yang. Yin is Venus, Mars is Yang. Okay, Yin is receiving, Mars is going on doing too. The Yin is Venus absorbing. Well, when you got the Venus and Mars together, it's very common that you're very charismatic, like Bill Clinton, and you can also be very narcissistic, like Bill Clinton. Now, the only exception I've seen with Venus-Mars is in Pisces. I've even seen people with Venus, Mars, and Cancer who are narcissistic, especially if they're close. Because the Mars feeds the Venus feeds the Mars. It's just, you're in love with yourself. You're enamored with yourself. Great charm people with Venus, Mars have. But if they're not careful, they'll become very narcissistic, in love with their own voice or their own actions. Did you need something?
Just listen to you.
Okay. Get a sip here. The good side, without a doubt, charming. You land on your feet. That's a beautiful thing about Libra. Okay, no, wait a minute.
Exclusive focus on interpersonal relationship may cause heterosexual audiences to believe that discrimination against gays is largely a thing of the past. This is you have to put like in a footnote.
Well, I think I could get Angel to talk forever on this.
Whenever you're doing a paper, you never want to be this series is the best on the planet. You always have to show up that you can also criticize it. You do when you talk about a Stonehenge, but if you would say, I did this research and this is what I found of the ideology of this, blah, 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 but I am not in agreement. And if you're going to say what you're going to say, and if you're in agreement, then just leave it.
Angel, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
centraloutreach.com.
Okay.
AEL.
So remember, go always to the conclusions.
You're on the air. You're on the air, buddy. You're on the air. You're talking live. You talking about Venus, Mars?
Whoops. I'm sorry.
You didn't know you were on the air?
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I was talking to my roommate.
That's okay. That's all right. It was fine. We enjoyed it. Anyhow, Venus and Mars is lovely. It can even be out of sign. It's very charismatic. A lot of people use it We see that Trump has that wonderful Jupiter, Chiron, Neptune of 1945, Jupiter, Neptune, Chiron, which so many artists have. We see how he uses it to BS people, but it's one of the reasons he does. Venus is very, very tricky. When Venus is with Mars, the Mars can make it a little more aggressive than it necessarily is. The other hand, it's the charm, the Venus-Saturn. Now we're going to talk now. Now we're going to talk to Venus-Saturn. I see Venus and Saturn. It's just unbelievable how many times I see Venus-Saturn. I see it probably in half the charts I do. Venus opposite Saturn, conjunct Saturn, square Saturn. Almost always it's Venus opposite Saturn. And I don't know why that is. I have a couple reasons, I think. And I think it's because Venus-Saturn people are all plugged up with their ability to receive, so they go see an astrologer to find out why. There's another major reason. I really believe this. Shoot me if you don't like it. A lot of people draw Venus-Saturn people into their life. A lot of people looking for love draw somebody with Venus-Saturn major aspect in their chart. And it's because they draw them to them, knowing unconsciously that that person can't give, and that means I really won't have to. A lot of people saying they're looking for love are not ready. What they're really saying is, could I get somebody to give me some love? We're all looking for love. But the people who are healthier, who are really ready for a codependent relationship, do not draw Venus-Saturn people into their life. Because a lot of Venus-Saturn people, and I've said this a million times, Venus-Saturn people, you're welcome in the foyer, but you're not getting in the house. You're welcome in the foyer. We'll have a lovely time here. Take off our shoes maybe. See my little plant in the corner. Have a cookie, but you're not getting in my house where the good stuff is. And a lot of people are that way. It's hard to let people into your heart when we know that's the answer, but it's hard when you're raised in a society which doesn't value it. So I firmly believe that most of the time I see people that date 5 people in a row, and they all got Venus-Saturn. That's why. And once the client gets healthy, they stop inviting Venus-Saturn into their life. Now, it's not always that way because Venus-Saturn has a good side, especially if the orb is a little wider. All of these things are much stronger when the orb is close. Venus-Saturn is somebody who can last with you. They can fight through tough times with you. They can take the ups and downs of a relationship, the stress of a relationship. But the problem with Venus and Saturn is this. Saturn does what? It makes sure. I'm going to make sure this works. Well, how many times have you ever been in a relationship and seen somebody make sure the relationship's going to work? It doesn't work. And then what do they try to do next? They try harder to make it work. Then you're really going nuts, right? Instead of letting it be and letting it flow. That's the problem with Venus-Saturn. Venus-Uranus, and I learned this stuff from Arroyo. Boy, was he right, because I think he's a Libra with a moon in Aquarius. But he was Sun Neptune too. He's very guarded about his chart. Venus-Uranus, the flirt. Venus-Uranus. Flirt can be fun and it's nice. Hey, cutie, how are you? Give me a cup of coffee. It can be really, really friendly. The problem with Venus-Uranus is, got to have that. You get so excited right away. 3 days later, I saw you smoked a cigarette. I can't stand being around you. They can just turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off. You see this in the chart. It's almost always the case. I don't care what sun sign is. Sudden attraction, sudden repelling. That's how Uranus works. Usually when there's a major Uranus involved in a composite chart or a strong synastry chart, you are attracted to the other person because you're exciting. But after a while, that same thing's exciting becomes irritant. It irritates you. You want out because you can't settle down. You can't just be yourself because things are always moving. It's not new. So Venus-Uranus is very friendly, lively, fun, great for a receptionist, and it's not really good for a permanent relationship. And these people who have Venus-Uranus need to, what they need to do in relationships is take responsibility for their own individuality instead of trying to make the other person responsible to make them happy. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go through Mars and then we'll quit and do the second half later next week because the second half's much tougher. Venus, Neptune, the romantics. Angel, Venus, Neptune people start talking and they're on the air and they don't know they're on the air. Venus, Neptune people, and you got this planet that's receptive and it's also unbounded. It's the beauty of Katharine Hepburn or Audrey Hepburn. It's the great beauty of I forget her name. She played the lead elf. And Kate Blanchett. Venus, Neptune. You got the unbounded beauty of Neptune, it's God itself, with Venus. Well, this makes people, I don't care how hard you are, you got Venus, Neptune in your chart, you are romantic. Oh, isn't that just lovely? Isn't that just a beautiful thing? Lots of tears is really a beautiful thing. But Venus, Neptune can also be, oh, honey, I'll write to you in prison every day. I promise you. I'll be there for 40 years, I promise. So dedicated. They just don't know what they're doing because Venus, Neptune, they don't know when to stop. Well, I love you. Well, again, I love you. I love you too. Well, let me love you. They don't understand limits. Have you ever seen a Venus and Sag next to Neptune? Woo! A Venus and Sag next to Neptune. They want 5 boyfriends. They want 13 different majors. They want to visit 20 countries next week. Woo! Let's go. So on the one hand, it's a very beautiful aspect, but on the other hand, it's just not very realistic. And you better have some strong Saturn in your chart or some strong Taurus to get you earthified a little bit. Venus, Pluto. Venus, Pluto. Whatever you have, it's very much like having Venus and Scorpio. Because it's next to Pluto. Well, since Venus, Pluto, and Scorpio. Venus, Pluto, and Scorpio is tough for the same reason that the moon is tough with Pluto. Because you have the tendency to dominate or be dominated. When you get a lot of Scorpio in the emotional part of a relationship, to keep the Scorpio happy, you want to blend with the other. The urge to merge. And when you have that urge so strong, you got to make sure you leave some room for the other one to breathe. It's that simple. It's that simple. It's great passion, but let everybody else breathe. And it's a real strong sign of jealousy, too. Emotional jealousy. Finally, we'll finish with Mars. And we'll get to some of your questions. Mars, we go to Mars, Jupiter. Usually Mars, Jupiter is very athletic. Usually. You see it a lot. I've seen many people with Mars, Jupiter that could care less about athletics because I ask them. But it's usually Mars rules the muscles. And Jupiter is all about expansion and let's do something. Let's get things rolling. So these people are very strongly found in the field of athletics. Or they do a strong exercise routine at home. But it's somebody who has a lot of energy. They really can do a lot. They're an explorer. On the negative side, it's just too much fire. It's just too much fire. Can you sit down for a few minutes? No, I got to go. Can you sit down? No, I got to go. Mars, Jupiter. Mars, Saturn. Ooh, tough one. I got this one. It can present you with problems with the muscles, MS, muscular dystrophy, different mind-body coordination problems. Mars Saturn is the symbol of frustration. It's the symbol of the military because they like discipline action. On the good side, it's very strong. It's got tremendous endurance. I've had MS 44 years and I'm still going. I ain't going real good, but I'm still going. And I give that to the stamina of my Mars Saturn. The negative side is you're blocked, you're frustrated, you're your own worst enemy, you paint yourself into the corner, you can become gloomy with your sense of adventure. You don't want to do anything, you don't want to try anything. So on the one side, it's kind of a dullard on your actions. On the other side, it gives you added stamina. Many people with Mars Saturn are attracted to the military because they like that sense of discipline to their actions. We're almost done here, and then we'll end our videotape. Mars Uranus. Mars Uranus. What I got to tell you about that, just say the two words, Mars Uranus. A lot of really fast athletics. A lot of people that are so unbelievably quick on the ice or on the field. They get these moves. The wide receiver for the Steelers, he's just so quick. Antonio. Just so fast. Their reflexes. Mars is lined up with Uranus. That's why. But they can't sit still. They get in trouble by being too wild. They get a little bit reckless. They hit with their helmet. They're too aggressive. They're too dynamic. On the good side, they're just extremely, unbelievably quick. Quick is different than speed. Quick is just reflexes. Antonio Brown, that's what I was thinking of. Mars Neptune. Boy, these people have some issues, and I got one of those too. The trouble with Mars Neptune, and it can be very nice, but it can really be trouble, is the Mars thinks it can do anything it wants. Like Venus Neptune. I can have all the boyfriends I want. What's the problem? Mars Neptune. I can do anything I want. Right? I can do anything I want. Well, on the good side, you can do anything you want. And on the bad side, you can do anything you want, you think, until the repercussions come back. So Mars and Neptune, they don't know how to operate within boundaries. Now, I got Mars with Saturn and Neptune. So it's really confusing. Opposite energies. Finally, Mars-Pluto, the last of tonight. Mars-Pluto, you can just hear it in the words. Mars-Pluto. Mars, I'd like to go knock that wall down. What do you think, Pluto? Pluto says, may I help you? Mars-Pluto, tough energy, strong energy. One pointed. You get that thing pointed right, there's no stopping you. But the problem with it is it's heavy-handed. Get out of my way. I'm coming. Get out of my way. It can be ruthless. It can be ruthless. Pluto's excuse is, I ran over them because they let me run over them. Ain't that a good one? I ran over them because they let me do it. If they were worthwhile, they wouldn't have let me, then they wouldn't have got run over. Which is kind of like the circuitous loop. Mars-Pluto is really passionate. It's found in charts of people who can be very aggressive, people who can take that aggression and go underground with it, but you have to be very careful of this energy. And what I tell people when they have Mars too strong in their chart, especially children, I work really hard with the parents to try to get them, to get the child into martial arts because of the disciplinary aspect, not winning the trophies, but to get those energies channeled. And that kid learns, I can release it here. I can be cool in school, I'll get the martial arts and I can fight and I can hit boards and all this stuff. and they can learn to discipline and control them. But one night in the future, when we look at other charts, you'll start to see more examples. So that's it for tonight. We'll continue with Jupiter onward, and each group gets smaller next week. I'm going to say goodbye to the YouTubers. This has been Rick and the crew on Astrology Unplugged with StarSelf.com. If you want to join us next week, just go to Astrology, and let's see, go to StarSelf.com, my website, StarSelf.com/unplugged. Because we're unplugged. We don't plug in. When we get here, we unplug. Good night.